Okay, so in this part we're going to be creating the header area, and that's going to include the logo and also the navigation. So we'll build the entire area at the top using the header element. Within that we'll create a nav element, and then we'll go ahead and style that appropriately in terms of the unordered list that we create, etc, etc. And then we'll start to introduce the button onto the navigation as well, which we'll need to style slightly differently. So let's take a look first of all at what we need to do to start writing the markup. So let's get rid of this piece of text here. So we've got our container, which we know that we need. We need the container in the background, the orange thing. But let's go ahead now and create a header element. So within the header element, what do we need? Well, we actually want to create a row on this header. This header we want to be a row. So we're going to go ahead and give this header a class of row. Now what we're also going to do is identify this uniquely by an ID. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to just have a generic header and style that just by targeting the header element. We want to go ahead and give this an ID of main. So basically what that means is that within here, when we go ahead and style our header, and let's just start doing that now, we'll just start to build this up. We can go ahead and say header, and then down here we say header hash main, and we can go ahead and apply the styling as per we would do. So within this, what do we need? Well, because this is a row, we need to go ahead and we need to add columns. So within this header, we're going to have one column which is a length of or a 4 column, and then within that we'll have the logo, and we'll style the logo separately. And then we have a navigation, which is going to be the other column. So we're going to sort of create the nav as the column. So let's go ahead and do this now. So we're going to go ahead and create a div in here with a class of large 4 column, and within this we want to go ahead and create a container. It doesn't have to be a container, it could be an anchor or anything like that, but inside of here I'm going to go ahead and create an anchor. This just keeps things sort of separated, and I'm going to call this brand. So what I'm now going to do is enter the text that we see in our Photoshop document here, coloristic. We're going to go ahead and enter that into here, and let's just set the href to a hash for now. So let's go ahead and just preview what this looks like. It's not going to look nice at all. It looks a bit weird, you know, everything's sort of pulled over here, but that's what we expect. We want this to be centered in the middle. The header doesn't look great at the moment, and it's going to start to look even worse now when we introduce the navigation. So what I'm going to do then is at the end of this column, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a nav element. So this is pretty much the same deal. It's going to be, again, we're going to give this an ID of main. What we're also going to do is give this a class of large 8 column, because that's you know, that makes sense, because then it takes up 8 columns, and we have a 12 column grid, so 8 plus 4 is 12. So within this we need to go ahead and create an unordered list. So the unordered list is basically a way of semantically laying out each of the navigation items at the top that we want to see. So in this case it's going to be li, and then within this is a list item, by the way, this is going to be an anchor. There we go. So we'll go ahead and set the href to hash again for each of these. We don't really need to direct these anywhere, this is purely design. Let's go ahead and copy these down and create an item for each one. And then we'll go back to the browser and we'll be shocked to see that this looks really, really horrible until we start styling it up. So we've got home, services, we've got portfolio, we've also got blog, about, contact, and the last one is more interesting. So this is going to be an anchor still, and this is going to be the sign up button. So this is going to be this button here. This is a little bit more interesting because we already have styles within Foundation that let us just add a class to this anchor and you know, see the button styles that we have. So we can just go ahead and type in button here, and then type in button primary, which will give us the primary button styles. Let's just go ahead and turn word wrap off. So we've now got this, you know, sign up button here. Let's go over to the browser and refresh and be shocked to see that this looks absolutely terrible. So it just doesn't look nice at all at the moment. It doesn't look anything like what we want it to look like. However, we can comfort ourselves in the fact that we've got the markup right, we've got the markup in the right order, everything's semantic, we've used the nav and the header element, which makes sense. All we need to do now is actually go and style this up, so we can gradually start to make this look a little bit better. Now the only thing that we do need to do is figure out which font is used for this logo, so we can go ahead and implement this. So this is Pacifico Regular. So what we can do is we can head over to our browser and we can, again using Google Fonts, go ahead and download the Pacifico font. So if we open this in Google Fonts, it's just got one weight here. Let's go ahead and scroll down and just copy this here. And let's just put that into our page. So we'll start to focus on the logo before we start to focus on the navigation. So let's go ahead and just again remove the type attribute here and change these single quotes to double quotes. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've loaded in Pacifico. So let's go ahead and start to style up the brand here. So we go down here and we're going to say header main dot brand, so we can start to apply styling to the brand here. So we're targeting, let's just close that, we're targeting this element here, not the actual anchor itself, but we're targeting the brand. So what we can do now, in fact we could actually target the anchor inside of it. So what we're going to do now is change the font family, as we probably guessed, to Pacifico. And we want to go ahead and change the font size as well, the color and the margin. But let's go ahead and look at that now. So that's already changed to a nicer font. Let's go ahead and change the font size to 2 M's. And let's change the color to what we pick out of here. So if we go ahead and just hit this font removes because I don't have the font installed on my system. But if we click here, we can see that this is the color that's being used for this particular piece of this element. So let's go ahead and add this in there. So that's pretty much it for it looking nice. This could be a bit bigger, but it doesn't really matter. Again, we're just sort of winging it and making it look as nice as possible, just so we can sort of learn the techniques behind these. We're not going to spend all the time sort of doing it up. So what we want to do now is go ahead and actually style the navigation itself. This is a little bit more tricky, but let's go ahead and add a separate comment section here to say nav. Okay, so we know that it's called hash main, or we know that it's got an ID of main, so we say hash main on this. And what we want to do is we want to style the unordered list within this. So remember, we've got nav and then an unordered list within it. Now by default, an unordered list has a list style type, which is the dots that you see here, the bullets that you see here. It has margin, padding, and we want to go ahead and remove these. We don't want this to be, we don't want this to exist. And we also want to float this right so it sits across the right of the page. So let's go ahead and change the list style type to none. And let's go ahead and set the margin to 0, the padding to 0, and the float of this let's change to right. So that's going to automatically have made this look a little bit nicer. Obviously though, the problem that we still have is that this is stacked from top to bottom. We want this to be horizontal. But that's not something for us to style within the UL. That's something for us to style within the list items within this. So again, we say nav hash main UL, but this time we're targeting each of the list items within this. So I'm going to say display inline block. What this will let me do is actually display them as if they were block level elements, but in line. And that means we can change the padding on them, the height on them, and all sorts of stuff. So now that you can see, it's actually starting to look really nice already. We've got obviously some spacing issues. We've also got some issues that you maybe can't quite tell straight away, and that's things like the, well, if we were to add margins, we would need to target the last element and remove the margin. We'll talk about that in a moment though. So for each of the list items, what do we want to do? Well, I want to go ahead and give a margin right of 20 pixels. So when I refresh, that spaces everything out quite nicely. But like I said a moment ago, if we inspect this last list item here, you can see that that's got a padding. It's very, very difficult to see, but if you keep your eye on this bit here, you can see the orange bit in Chrome that represents the padding. We're giving padding on the right hand side when we don't actually need it. So what we want to go ahead and do is target the last element here. So we need a new selector. We want to target the last li. So we say last child. Now, what this basically is going to let us do is set the margin right to 0. So we set the margin right to 0 on that one. So if you keep an eye on when I refresh, that just moves over a little bit. So now we've got everything perfectly lined up again. Everything looks better. Okay, so the last thing to do is actually style the, or the last thing to do in terms of these is to style the elements here to change their color, the font size, the transformation. We want these to be uppercase. Let's just examine this again. So if we look at these, you can see that they're small, they've got a dark font. We can go ahead and just pick out the color as well from here. So if we just click here, so that's the color. Well, it looks as though it's the same color as the header, so that's fine, or the logo if you like. So let's go ahead and just start to style these. So again, we say nav main ul li a this time. We're styling the anchors within them. So we want to go ahead and we want to change the font size to 78%. Now, you can just guess this really, it doesn't matter too much, but that's basically changed that to a smaller font. You can pick whatever you want to do really. What we also want to do is go ahead and set text transform to uppercase. We want these to be uppercase, and we want to change the font weight to 600 as well. So remember that when we included the font for Open Sans up here, the first one that we did, we included all of the different weights here, and we've chosen 600. So we're setting the font weight here to 600. Okay, so that's actually looking quite nice now, but we need to just go ahead and change the color of the elements. Now we could do this in here, but let's just take a look at what happens if we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and set a color to 393. Can't really remember it. Let's just grab that again. It's the same as the header. So paste that in there and go ahead and refresh. And there we go. So we've now got these dark menu items as we'd expect. However, the only problem is, because this is an anchor within these list items, as are these other items, we've changed the button to black as well. And we want to leave that as the default white. So what we can do is, instead of including this property here, we can create a new selector for nav main ul li a, but this time we're going to say not, and in brackets define what we where we don't want to apply this to. So we know that here we have got a class of button on this anchor, so we can go ahead and say not dot button. So you basically just put the class name or whatever inside of here, and then we go ahead and paste that property back in there. So we're now styling all of the anchors except the button, which will leave this with black or dark text here and then white text here as normal. So we are very nearly there. All we need to do now for this header is go ahead and set the margin on the bottom, because remember we've got this sort of feature that's going to be down here. We need to set more of a margin on the bottom. So what we want to go ahead and do is just quickly fill that in now. We can always adjust this later if it's not quite right, but we'll go ahead and set a margin bottom to 40 pixels. So that will just pull that down a little bit like that. So what we now want to do is style this button. So let's go ahead and do this in the next part, and once we've done that, that will literally just be our header complete.